Are there any of these items that we need to discuss any further after last week? All right. Seeing none, Madam Clerk, we do have a few ordinances on first read, so let's go ahead and get started with 6A, please.
An ordinance to amend Chattanooga City Code, Part 2, Chapter 21, by remaining the chapter Property Maintenance, deleting Article 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6 relative to housing and replacing with new Articles 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 relative to property maintenance, renumbering Article 5, referral service to Article 6, referral service moving Article 8 to new Article 3, Division 4 relative to the administrative hearing officer, deleting 18, Section 18158 through 18170 relative to litter and overgrowth, and adding Appendix A to Chapter 21.
Thank you. Councilman Mitchell?
It's too tempting. Ms. Williams, can you come explain what this is about? Thank you.
I apologize, I don't have it in front of me. This is the ordinance for Judge Williams's AHO contract. Okay. So he has a contract, and it is expiring, and we would like to renew it per his original contract for one more year.
Okay.
Sure could have said that a lot easier than everything.
It's a lot of words. Yeah.
That's a lot of
How
words.
come it takes all this to do that?
I don't know. We are government now. I don't know. We get paid by the word. Y'all know we get paid by the word.
Okay.
Councilman, I do not know why it's worded that way, but that's what that is.
Okay. All right.
High-performing government.
All right.
Overachievers. Does that answer your question, sir? I'm sorry. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Councilman Gilbert?
I have a question to the lawyer.
Yes, sir.
In Chattanooga, there's been in the amount of years, there's been an increase of trash everywhere. Do we not have a ordinance or something in place for the police to actually, if someone throws something out the window, they have a $250 fine, some kind of fine, because it's getting too much regularity of just trash everywhere. And Chattanooga, and we ain't got enough people to pick it all up. So do we have anything that could stop or curb it some in place already?
We currently have the litter provisions here. There are also state litter provisions regarding people that litter outside of houses. The provisions for the property maintenance requirement also have sections in there about actually making sure they have adequate trash cans, adequate dumpsters in connection with houses, and that's one of those issues in connection with the revisions. It was my understanding, if we're talking about item number 6A, this was one of the items that we were going to be trying to at least have deferred for a couple of weeks, I believe.
Yeah, I was referring to driving down the street, throwing trash out the cars.
The state litter provisions are usually the most beneficial in that regard, and those state litter provisions do have provisions that that handle first offense, second offense type situations in connection with that. Whether you end up losing your right to be able to continue to throw out and litter in a neighborhood is there as a state ordinance violation, and it's pretty more restrictive than our local ordinance. Our local ordinance is a $50 fine, but the state law is much more specific.
How can we get that to start activated? I mean, can we start?
Yes, sir, and our police department should be enforcing that, but I'll speak with them about that. Mr. Irvin can tell us about whether they like to do that on a regular basis. Litter violations, Jason.
Well, they got the cameras and they got the body cams, they got the cameras. They can see somebody in front of their cars throwing trash out, and they can stop. And once you stop 3 or 4 people, then the rest of them start doing the right thing.
Yes, sir. I know that the provisions on littering are very bad because sometimes if someone is drinking in a car and they throw that out of a vehicle in connection with a drinking violation, the litter violation is even heavier than the first offense DUI would be.
Okay. Thanks.
Good, Councilman.
Yeah.
Ms. Williams? Are we, you can just answer from there if you want, but are we prepared to move on this item this evening, or there was a discussion earlier about maybe needing a couple of weeks deferral? Do we have clarification?
Let me apologize. Richard told me you guys were not asking about the AHO. I didn't have my agenda in front of me. The first item is about a change in the IPMC, the code that we use for code enforcement. and we want to adopt the more current code type, I guess is the best word. But it was my understanding from City Attorney's Office that a deferral, that you all wanted us to defer it for 2 weeks to get additional information. Is that
I
incorrect?
believe that this was the request by Ms. Melinda Foster in our office.
Yes.
And Richard last week here, if there could be a deferral for 2 weeks, just to make sure that they had all the language completed.
Okay,
Work has been
yes,
a
that
little
was
bit
my
heavy in our
understanding.
office concerning that, and it was at our request on
Okay,
there.
thank you, sir. Ms. Williams, this does apply to the AHO as far as litter overgrowth. These are cases that can go to the AHO, is that correct, though?
Oh, definitely.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
That's where I think the expectation of the tie-in was on those.
Yes, and just for a bit more clarification, we have some inconsistencies in our code that once we adopt the current IPMC, will clear it up. So there's some nuances that makes it a little difficult for us when we're trying to prove cases in court, when we get folks to court for property maintenance violations. And this adoption will clear that up and make it easier for the judge to act on what we want him or her to act on.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
So, Phil, there is still the request of the
Request
city
that it
attorney
be
offer for a
deferred
defer for 2 weeks.
And that 2 week would be, I believe that is at March the 5th.
All right, thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Item A. Madam Clerk, let's move on to B, please.
An ordinance amending ordinance number 13334, known as the fiscal year 2018-2019 budget ordinance, so as to reappropriate $25,000 from the general fund, Department of Economic and Community Development Homeless Outreach Program, G00106, to Family Promise to meet the emergency housing needs of displaced individuals experiencing homelessness and shelter needs for veterans in its program.
C, please.
An ordinance to amend ordinance number 13335, known as the fiscal year 2018-2019 capital improvement budget ordinance, so as to reappropriate $30,000 from the Department of Transportation Capital Fund to Chattanooga Area Regional Transit Authority for a transit network redesign study, and $60,000 from the Department of Economic and Community Development Capital Fund to River City Company for the 4th Street Master Plan, and appropriate $500,000 from the Chattanooga Public Library Operating Fund to Library HVAC, Lighting, and Asbestos Removal Capital Project.
All right, D, please.
An ordinance to amend ordinance number 13214, known as the fiscal year 2017-2018 capital improvement budget ordinance, so as to appropriate $500,000 from the Department of Economic and Community Development Capital Fund to the Southeast Tennessee Development District for the Small Business Loan Program.
Ms. Williams, can I ask a question about this one? Hey, if this this item should pass this evening, when do you expect availability of the funds and the application process and all of that to be made available?
Well, the Southeast Tennessee Development District, they're working on revising the contract a little bit. There are some nuances about the way we want it done that's inconsistent with the way their software is set up right now. So I would guess we would be ready, not really speaking for them, but they may have to take that before their board, but I would say 45 to 60 days,
Okay,
where we would
up
be
to
awarding.
Up to 60 days before, and then how soon do you think before you'd be able to take applications? Is that about that same time frame? Or?
Oh, yeah, we can take applications now.
Oh, you can take
Yes,
applications
sir.
now. Okay.
We can take applications once it's approved. But then the question comes into how the loans are actually put into their computer system.
Got it. Okay.
And that is a little different from the way that they currently do it now.
And is that posted somewhere at the moment where somebody can go to fill out one of those applications? Do you know if we have that online
I
yet?
don't know. I'll have to ask Sharita and Jermaine if it's posted yet.
Okay.
I'll find out about that. I'm not sure about that.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, you please.
An ordinance to amend Chattanooga City Code, Part 2, Chapter 38, zoning ordinance, so as to amend and lift conditions on property located at 706, 710, and 716 Ashland Terrace, more particularly described herein.
Good, Councilman. Let's move on down to resolutions. 7A, please.
A resolution authorizing the mayor to execute a second agreement to exercise option to renew with the Chattanooga Housing Authority in substantially the form attached for a term of 1 year for the use of gymnasium at Cromwell Hill Apartments to operate programs for youth, young adults, and families on the property located at 3940 Camilla Drive.
B, please.
A resolution authorizing the mayor to execute a second agreement to exercise option to renew with the Chattanooga Housing Authority in substantially the form attached for a term of 1 year for the use of the Sheila Jennings Wellness Center to operate programs for youth, young adults, and families on the property located at 1201 Poplar Street.
Councilman. C, please.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Economic and Community Development to award home program funding to Habitat for Humanity of Chattanooga for the for the development of 4 affordable home ownership opportunities in the amount of $160,000.
D, please.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Economic and Community Development to exercise the first option to renew the administrative hearing officer agreement with Judge Walter Williams for an additional 12-month term with 3 remaining 12-month extension options for a total amount of $25,000.
E, please.
A resolution authorizing the acceptance of a City of Chattanooga 2019 Public Art Strategic Plan and authorizes the Chattanooga Public Art Commission and Public Art Division staff to advance public art policy recommendations.
All right. Moving on down to our short-term vacation rentals. Let's roll through these, as I imagine it'll be later before we have any questions on these, ma'am. F, please. Oh, excuse me, just a moment. Were you raising your hand? F, please.
A resolution approving short-term vacation rental application number 18 STBR 00162 for property located at 4204 Seneca Avenue.
Okay. G.
A resolution approving short-term vacation rental application number 18 STBR 00178 for property located at 611 Tremont Street.
H.
A resolution approving short-term vacation rental application number 18 STVR 00190 for property located at 1609 Launch Street, Unit 105.
All right, next, please.
A resolution approving short-term vacation rental application number 18 STVR 00200 for property located at 4421 Alabama Avenue.
And J, please.
A resolution approving short-term vacation rental application 18 STVR 00225 for property located at 507 Colville Street.
Did you have a question at the end of this? Good. Okay, let's move on to K, please.
A resolution to confirm the mayor's appointment of Jeffrey McClendon to Chattanooga Housing Authority Board.
All right, thank you. Councilman Henderson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've got an item on our agenda that refers to our home program funding, and I just wanted to recognize Kenny Elwood. He's sitting out in the audience with us this afternoon. He's our, for those of you that don't know him, our affordable housing specialist with Economic and Community Development, and does a great job. Worked very closely with Kenny last year, bringing in a group of volunteers to make an impact on our community, and I just wanted to give just a short report. And Mr. Elwood's also got some applications for any of you that would like to hand those out in your district. We're going to have that program again this year. You want to just say a word right quick, and then I can go over the economic impact report.
The program's fixing to crank up. Right now we're in the process of reviewing 102 projects. I have a breakdown that I can give you a list of who all is in what district. We've itemized them like we did last year. We're on track with World Changers is going to have about, group is going to have about 305 kids. World Changers will have 400 and something kids. So we're on track to have about 900 kids come in and impact Chattanooga this year as well. Last year we had about the same amount, but not as early as we have here today. So that is probably going to increase. We were able to touch 90 homes last season in a 3-week period and make a lot of impact. But they also spend a lot of money in Chattanooga when they come. So we appreciate your efforts and your support. And if there's any way you can get out the word in the community, we're taking up applications year-round now. We have some other partners that we're working with to try and facilitate some of these projects during the middle of the year. We're forced with these two groups, because they are during the summer when the kids are out of school, to really do it during the summer. But on other occasions, we're working towards increasing that all year. Thank you very much.
And you've got some applications, right, for the home repair? So last year, we were able to do some exterior painting, interior painting, replace steps, some porches, some wheelchair ramps. We had volunteers from 8 different states. Now, this was just the group work camp that I worked with, and we had a total investment into the community. Now, we had, I think, from home funds, we contributed about nearly $12,000, but we had an economic impact to the community of $207,000 for that $11,000 that we invested. So I felt like there were, it's a win-win. The volunteers get some opportunities to learn some work experience and get to interact with the residents. And the residents really are impacted because many times they don't have the funds that they need to be able to make repairs on their homes. And it's just so impactful for them, but it's a great program.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think you said there were some applications we can have. Is that what's coming around?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
great. Thank you. All right, we have no departmental report, so that ends this section of our agenda session unless there's anything further. And not seeing any, we will adjourn to Public Works and Transportation Committee with Chairman Mitchell.
I'm sending you a copy and him a copy. Steve, I just sent you. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Can I get approval of minutes? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you very much. Looks like we'll be starting with Mr. Holland, Public Works. Have an ordinance on final reading. Does anybody have any questions on that before we move on? Something to do with Airport Road? Yeah, it's out east. Okay, we'll move on. Let's go. Now, this first resolution I'm going to have you read, but it is one that was deferred from 1/29/19. Please read 7L.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Public Works to enter into an agreement with ENCO Utility Services for sewer billing services for a 1-year term with 2 optional 1-year renewals for a cost of $1.20 per bill per month, plus setup, licensing, and incidentals, shut-off notice, printing, call center services, etc., for a total amount not to exceed $1.2 million.
So is this ready now for us to vote on tonight, Mr. Holland?
Yes, sir. And the only reason it was deferred was we were working out some contract details.
Okay, so that's straightened out now.
Yes, sir.
Very good. Thank you. Please read M.
A resolution authorizing the approval of change order number 1 with HDR Engineering, Inc. to perform a rate structure analysis relative to the Water Quality Program rate study in the amount of $73,500 for a revised amount not to exceed $438,194.
I believe this is something you explained to us a couple of weeks ago.
Yes, sir. You heard from Mr. Payne 2 weeks ago on this, and we'll entertain any questions, any additional questions.
You okay, Councilman Ledford?
You answered my question on the first one, sir.
Oh, okay, all right. I see no questions. Okay, so we're ready to move to the vote this evening. Please read N.
A resolution authorizing the renewal of on-call modeling and floodplain analysis services from LDA Engineering, CDM Smith, Stantec, AECOM, Wood Environmental, JBWSC, Fulgham, McIndoe, and HDR for renewal of 8 one-year blanket contracts with these professional firms for year 3 of 3 for professional services estimated at $650,000 total annually for all 8 professional firms for use by all departments.
Good. Councilman Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Justin, is this, I believe I understand what this is actually for, but this modeling and floodplain analysis, does it help us in events like we're about to go through to determine which areas are going to flood or where we can expect potential problems?
In a sense, but a little bit more localized to scope, so it's not such a broad scope that for the entire city. It's pretty specific to a project or an area that we're trying to resolve a flooding issue.
Oh, okay.
Recently, this was used for some data acquisition and program management for Davidson Road is a recent example of where we have a area that's flooding. We need to do a larger analysis of what the impacts are to that road, and so we would use this contract if we were planning a construction project near a floodplain, or if there was a serious water issue we need to deal with.
So there's nothing specific that this is necessarily going to right now. It's just for
right. It's just an on-call contract, allows us the flexibility to engage with these firms.
Okay. You all right? Yep. Councilman Gilbert.
Just briefly, just after your presentation, you're going to talk about this week some, correct?
I'm prepared to do that. Yes,
All
sir.
right. Thank you.
Yeah, we got a couple more, and then we'll go to that. Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to next week's resolution, 7E.
A resolution authorizing the approval of change order number 1 final for Tri-State Roofing Contractors of Chattanooga, Tennessee, relative to contract number Y17019201, replacement roofing system for Shepherd YFD Center Building, for an increased amount of $18,546 for a revised contract amount not to exceed $173,615.
Councilman Burrs is not here. I'll ask, what's the increase for?
Well, really, a lot of it was due to some HVAC improvements that we're planning. So during a project like this, we look at what the other impacts on that building are. We also made some minor repairs to the roof over the gymnasium. Really just some structural things that needed to happen for a future project, and to support the HVAC system was a large part of that increase, but a couple other small projects that we managed, including some additional downspouts, and that's it.
Okay. Please read F.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Public Works is hereby authorized to apply for and accept, if awarded, reimbursable funds for the Household Hazardous Waste Grant from the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation to operate the Household Hazardous Waste Facility for an amount not to exceed $95,000.
Councilman Ledford.
I finally have a question, Chairman. Justin, where is this facility?
Davidson Road is what I heard.
It's co-located.
I wouldn't doubt it.
Co-located with the Wood Recycle Center. It's
Very good.
3925 North Hawthorne Street.
Okay.
The center is something interesting to note about this grant from the state is that this previously only operated 1 day per month. And about 2 years ago, the state increased the amount of funding to allow us to operate that 5 days a week. So that center is open now 5 days a week. They've done quite a bit of additional volume through that center, which is helpful for our environment. And that's what the purpose of that center is for. So they actually accept materials from any resident in the county. It's a county-wide grant provided that the state manages for, that the city manages for the state.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you,
Yes.
Chairman.
You okay? All right.
Perfect.
All right, that looks to be all the resolutions for the next 2 weeks. How about giving us a little update about how you intend to keep us all from drowning this week?
Well, first of all, if you see a road that's flooded, turn around, don't drown.
Okay.
That is good advice, I think, that the fire department reiterates to people. They don't want to be out rescuing you, but we do have we do work in close coordination with the fire department, police department. I was at the Emergency Operations Center this morning at the county, working with other agencies to, we just talk about our plans, and other agencies discuss their plans, and what we might forecast and predict to happen in Chattanooga. So we do expect to receive 3 inches of rain through Thursday, up to 6 inches of rain through Sunday. think the flood watch is in effect tonight through Thursday morning. In our operations in Public Works, we do quite a bit of predictive flood analysis work with, in cooperation with USGS. The National Weather Service provides us data. We also tap TVA and a lot of other partners to draw in information to give us better predictive information about our streets and how they might flood in a storm like this. Our wastewater operations have a wet weather team that goes into effect to help us to prevent overflows when severe weather hits. We also are clearing catch basins and in areas that are prone to flooding. Those are typically low areas where it's just difficult to pump the water out of that system. And then obviously right after the ground gets saturated with so much water and we have high winds, then we look for trees to fall. So we've got a myriad of issues that we deal with, just clearing the right of way and maintaining that, and then our partners at Fire and Police do the rest of the work. So we're appreciative of their partnership, and we've got a great coordination with them.
Have any questions? Councilman Gilbert.
Justin, I noticed as I was coming to council, the pipes currently on Chickamauga Creek, they're floating like this. With the increase of water, are you predicting that they're going to not bust any way, or have they busted any kind of way so far?
No, when you had asked me about this previously, I think the water was up quite a bit. Similar situation, may not be as high as it's going to be, but they are anchored, and our contractor's aware, what the flood way looks like and what the flooding areas that they might anticipate look like, and they've got those secured.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other questions? Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Chairman. Justin, we'll talk about this probably tonight again, just to remind folks with the weather coming, but where can they go to figure out what road is closed and what locations quickly before hopefully they won't venture out too much, but if they have to?
Yeah, it's a good question. So this afternoon at the Emergency Operations Center, I spoke with John Stumer with 911, and then subsequently have followed up with police and fire chiefs to coordinate road closure activities. Typically that's done through 911 with the police and fire departments. There's a little bit of a gap in communication when Public Works goes out to close a road, but we're now communicating those to 911, and during a severe weather event, the 911 staff have agreed to email the leadership in those agencies to let us know, to give us a more current update, and we'll update those on social media from each of the agencies that receive that.
Very good, very good. Will you let me know when they close Davidson?
They can do that, sir.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions? I see none.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Good luck this week. Okay, Mr. Bailey. How you doing? Good, 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 good. We have some ordinances on final reading for Transportation Department. Any questions about those? All right, then we'll move right to next week, and we have some resolutions for the 26th of February. Please read 7G.
A resolution authorizing M Street Chat LLC, care of Reggie Walls, to use temporarily the right-of-way located at 405 North Market Street for the purpose of installing a projecting sign as shown on the maps attached hereto and made a part hereof by reference, subject to certain conditions.
Got a question? You okay? We're on the next page. You all right? Okay. Please read H.
A resolution authorizing Buddy Ratley signs, care of Buddy Ratley, on behalf of property owner R. Steve Hunt, to use temporarily the right-of-way located at 631 Broad Street for the purpose of installing protecting signs as shown on the maps attached hereto and made a part hereof by reference, subject to certain conditions.
You okay? All right. I, please.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Transportation to enter into an agreement with the Cord Cordino Group relative to contract number T15027201 for professional services associated with Chattanooga Regional ITS Phase 1A CCTV cameras in the CBD construction, engineering, and inspection in the amount of $94,850.
Councilman Ledford.
Will you just give us what a little breakdown on the professional services they're doing?
This is construction, engineering, inspection for the CCTV project, which is the traffic sensor project that you all approved. I want to guess a month or two ago.
Yeah.
So this is a required construction oversight that we do with all federally funded projects.
So, got that oversight. I was really curious as to like, what do they do?
Oh, well, they oversee the installation to make sure
So
that
they're
it's done.
making sure that all the i's are dotted and the t's are crossed.
That's
and-
correct.
Okay. I think that's all I'm going to get out of that, Chairman. Thank you.
Short run, was it? Okay. Mr. Bailey, I'm not going to ask you about you have some, these are future, and I know usually we would wait till they're actually on the agenda, but there was a couple of questions in our strategic planning meeting. I'm not going to ask you about the temporary use permit changes yet, but I know that you're coordinating with Chairman Smith on those, and you're, I believe, trying to create something that's a little less, lengthy process to be helpful for folks.
Yes, sir. Chairman Smith suggested 2 or 3 months ago to make some changes that would make the temporary use process more administrative, which could, will, if approved by council, would shorten the time frame for those permits.
Okay, all right. We'll wait to see that when it comes out. But I have another question. What prompts the process of a speed limit change on a road?
Well, in my background, we make those requests, although I wouldn't say that that's the only way to do it. We would receive any request, and the one that's on, I assume you're referring to one that's on the 3-week agenda that we've targeted for.
Yeah. Well, Mount Creek Road is on the
Sure.
3-week agenda, but any road, what's the process if putting in a pipeline for a consideration of a speed limit change?
We receive those requests and usually evaluate them on a case-by-case basis. So I'm most comfortable talking about this one, which was actually a citizen request in Councilman Henderson's district. We happened to make some changes. Well, we didn't. A developer was required to make some changes to the intersection of North Runyon Drive and Mountain Creek Road. There also have been some accidents at a gas station up the street, and some other requests historically from other residents in the area, the neighborhoods that are, I'm visualizing the east side of as you're going away from Signal Mountain Road, some neighborhoods that are on the right have requested that we look at speed limits. We don't change speed limits superficially because we don't want to create speed traps. But in this case, our roundabouts are designed for a 15-mile-an-hour approach. So it made sense for us to change the speed limit due to the roundabout that's been put in. And then also because of the sight distance, we felt like a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit was safer to potentially ward off, with enforcement of course, ward off some of the crashes that have occurred in the curve and some limited sight distance coming out of some driveways. So that's why this one is appearing before you in a couple of weeks.
Okay. You got Councilman Gilbert.
Hello, Blake. I see your shades. Look good.
I did.
What's the deadline again on the road pavement? What's the deadline for us to have the information in?
I can't remember off the top of my head.
I think it was
Mr.
March
Councilman.
1st.
March. I thought it was March 1st. I want to make sure.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Let's make it March 1st.
All right, sir. Thank you.
It's important that we get everybody's feedback. Last year at this time, I think there was a couple of you that hadn't, and I reached out to you individually. I don't want to promise that I'll do that again, but I will say that we want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to give us requests.
Councilman Ledford.
Thank you. You got mine. Google
I
Docs?
did.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So in the speed limit change, in your experience, have you seen most of them decrease or an increase? Is there ever an increase?
I have not, in my experience, increased a speed limit that I can think of.
Okay, didn't think so. I was just curious, had to ask. And so that request can come from a citizen, one of us, anybody can just
Yep.
give you a road and say, I need you to look at it?
Yes, sir. And we
Okay.
do, as I'll stress again, we don't want to just change the sign because we found that drivers behave according to the way the street is designed, not according to the signage. And we don't want to create something where it feels comfortable driving 45, but the speed limit's 25 because that presents a problem that nobody wants to be in. We'd rather have a street that actually affects slower driving. So that's our first parameter, is to
Sure.
determine, is there actually a justification for the speed limit to be lowered?
I can understand that logic, because a road a lot of times will tell you
Yep.
how it wants to be driven. I believe that. So, okay, thank you. Appreciate the question and follow through.
You talk to roads a lot? It's okay. It's okay. Mr. Baby, one more question, then Councilman Henderson wants to jump in here about something, but we haven't gone over a little while the traffic calming procedure with the road. Could you just briefly go over the steps of that for us?
Would love to.
Okay.
We have a process on our website that I'm happy to send you all a link, so you can just click on it and go straight to it. I haven't looked through that policy in probably a month or two, but I'm going to guess that it's a 5 or 6 page policy. It describes all the details of how it works. In summary, it's pretty simple. We get a request. Excuse me. I had notes, but of course now I can't find them. Huh. Oh, here we go. We have an application online. It's a part of the policy. You fill out the application. The process requires an applicant. We determine eligibility first. So there's no heavy lift initially, and eligibility is determined by, we don't want to put in speed humps on steep slopes because that can present a traffic hazard. If somebody's flying down a street and they hit a speed hump, there's other things that make a street ineligible for speed humps. And if that's the case, we just notify the applicant up front to save them all the work and say, sorry, but it's not eligible for traffic calming. If it is eligible, then we give the applicant an area map and a blank petition. And we require that the neighborhood, within the property owners within the neighborhood, approve of traffic calming at 67% rate or higher. And the reason we do that, you all probably know as well as anybody, that not everyone loves speed humps, and so we don't want to spend tax-funded staff resources or materials on an application that people aren't going to want. So we want to make sure that it's actually approved before we do any work. When we get that petition, oftentimes we don't get the petitions back. But when we do get the petitions back, then we do speed studies. We have one staff person who goes around all over the city and does speed studies and other data collection on traffic. And one of the things they do is the speed studies for the traffic calming program. And we don't always put in speed humps. It's not a matter of request, it's a matter of need. So again, we don't want to put them in if they're not needed. We define that need based on crashes. It's usually speed, but it can also be crashes. And typically it's a 10 mile an hour or over the speed limit is what makes the street eligible for traffic calming. And in a nutshell, that's the process. Of course, once a street is approved, it can take weeks or months to install the speed humps based on staffing, the crews that put them in. And Citywide Services helps us with that. So the Public Works crews install those speed humps for us. So they, of course, have all kinds of things that they're doing all over the city. So we get to them as soon as we can get to them. That's the process for traffic calming.
Do you have any other things that you do to roads to calm other than speed humps?
We do. When I started, we developed what we called Neighborhood Traffic Management Program 2.0, and it offers an alternative to speed humps, which we still make available from time to time. We do generally recommend the speed humps because they're really easy and they're proven to work. We do have data that shows that speed humps are really effective at slowing down traffic. But if a neighborhood wants traffic calming but doesn't want speed humps, they can ask us for that, and we can offer some alternatives. We can't always do everything because sometimes the alternative might be too expensive or it might be something that we can't fund, but we always want to look for alternatives if that's what's desired.
Okay. Are you going to bring this up? Can I go to Councilman Byrd first?
Inverted
Councilman
speed
Byrd.
humps.
Thank you. You said with the speed study, Blythe, that it's a certain speed that you look at.
Yes,
What
sir.
is that speed when
It's
you do
10 miles an hour or over the speed limit.
10 miles an hour over the speed limit?
Yes, sir. Most residential streets are, unless there's an exception in the code, most residential streets are 25 miles an hour. So that means a residential street would need to be 35.1 or higher to be that's the prevailing speed. That's the speed at which 85% of the traffic is traveling above.
85%. So if is there a gray area, or is it just those physical numbers? So say if it's 84% and then the speed is 9 miles over, do we look at that, or is it just that's where it cuts off at with those numbers?
I think what we've done in the past, in order to administer the program, I think we have to have clear expectations. And so, no, technically that wouldn't qualify, but
It
when we
wouldn't
have ones
qualify.
that are close, we try to like, we'll tell folks, there may have even been one in your district, Mr. Councilman, where we said, we'll come back and check, either when school's out or when school's on, different circumstances, because traffic patterns change from time to time. So, that's the way we handle it. We do have a hard cutoff, and it's quantitative. It's not meant to be a gray area. It's meant to be, does it qualify or does it not?
And I remember we talked one time about, I think it was a boys club, where traffic crossing signals or things of that nature, doesn't it vary when it comes to highway? I think we was over by the East Lake Courts area, and it was something with the kids coming across the street from the boys club to the East Lake Courts area. Isn't it something about different roads as well that play a part in it? If it's a certain road, I think you explained it to me about something about it coming off a highway or some of that nature, because it's the interstate.
I don't remember this request, Councilman.
Okay.
We don't typically do crosswalks through the traffic calming program, but there are criteria for when we can't do crosswalks. I'm picturing 4th Avenue. Is that what you're thinking of? I'd have to go back and look. I'd be happy to check in with you after the meeting and see if we can figure out where that area was and see if I can help you.
And you said with the application, the council person or the community, because I'm getting a lot of requests for Dotson Avenue and Wilcox, some type of traffic calming study there.
I think you requested actual crosswalks, correct? Councilman?
Yes, any type of traffic thing
I
to
sent
calm
that
that down.
request on to our operations team. I can check back and see where we landed on that.
Thank you so much.
You okay? How much does a speed hump cost?
I think they're about, golly, I can tell you exactly, Councilman, if you give me, rather than guess.
Okay.
They're, depending on how many there are, we can do a traffic calming project for a couple of $1,000s all the way up to 9 or 10 or maybe more than that, depending on how many sets there are and how wide the street is. But I can give you a full range because we track that cost for each project.
And you'd mentioned homeowners' signatures on a petition. What about renters?
I have to look at the program and how we define it, but I think we don't distinguish between, it's the resident of a property.
Okay, all right, thank you. Councilman Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. While you are here and Mr. Bailey is here, Mr. Bailey, we got our audit report on paving
Yes, sir. recently,
and they've got about 7 recommendations in here, one of which is more dollars for paving.
Yes,
And, Mr. Chairman, I would like to ask for maybe Mr. Sewell and Mr. Bailey to come at some point. I don't know if next week. I know budget time's coming up, but I would like to sort of go through this audit report
Sure.
and the recommendations that they are making, and get his position on why he's making them, and get your position on where you are on them.
Okay.
Wasn't there some comments in there about integrating the work that Public Works is doing into the chart also? As Mr. Holland tries to hide.
Well, we'll ask Mr. Holland to come to this
Okay.
meeting as well.
Well, I'll ask for the chairman's help on this. Mr. Chair, should we do this in a Public Works and Transportation Committee meeting that's the regular, like 2 weeks from now, or should we do a special one, or?
I'm happy to do it however you would like. I think we do a special and just focus on water.
Do we, well, if he's available, do we want to try to do it as early as next week?
That'd be pretty quick. Maybe we just combine it with our regular 2 week.
Okay,
I mean, I know that doesn't focus, but that gives everybody plenty of time.
so that would be the 5th?
Yes,
All right, yeah, fifth.
yes, March 5th.
So that would be the day that we also are doing planning and zoning, but I think the agenda on that's going to be a little bit light this time. Isn't it? Okay, all right, yeah, all right, 2 weeks.
Great.
Can you come to the party?
Of course.
How about you, Mr.
What
Holland?
about Mr. Holland?
All right, thank you very much. Is that it, Chairman?
Yeah.
All right, if there are no more questions, I believe we're adjourning until 6 o'clock. All right, thank you, everybody.
Well, your map is attached. It's first thing up. We've got the language in the ordinance. We've sent it on to Mike Price. I think we're okay.
Okay,
All right,
let's do it.
we'll do it. First reading, though. I'm sorry.
That's all right.